There are names, faces, and memories that I'll never forget. Like Angela, the girl who would rather look at the floor than at me. Oh, she was so smart, but she didn't know how to use her voice. And unless it was to defend herself, which unfortunately she was pretty accustomed to, she came with a label of a girl with a bad attitude. There's John. John could pour his heart into poetry like none other because in his mind, it was the only thing that wouldn't let him down. See, John had been through more trauma as a first grader than most of us will endure in a lifetime, but he was strong and he was talented. He just lacked basic support and this confidence that comes when someone believes in you. And then there's Zach. Man, Zach was funny. He had the best dad jokes. He could do anything he set his mind to, willing to try anything, an incredible leader in his space, but he had to start his life over when tragedy forced him to walk the hardest path I've ever seen someone have to take. These names, faces, memories, they're only a few of hundreds in my head. See, I was a high school speech and debate coach for 13 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to teach the most incredible individuals from all walks of life. As an educator, we set out to teach, to make an impact. It's never for the money. But what I was taught in my own classroom from thousands of interactions with students is why I'm here today. My name is Julie Schneers, and I'm now a speaker, a leadership consultant, and a growth coach. My master's is in executive coaching and consulting, and my heart is in people, helping people recognize their potential. I've worked with a lot of school districts and a lot of companies of all kinds, and I've learned there's not a lot of difference between a high school student leader and a boardroom executive. The truth is that the tie that binds, that transitions to every space, whether it's the home front, the classroom, the boardroom, the team meeting space, is that we're all people. And through a lot of testing on a wide variety of subjects, I've learned the key components that can help anyone thrive in any space. I'm just curious, can I get a show of hands? Who's ever been in an environment where they didn't feel seen or connected with? Yeah, it's actually pretty common because organizations today tend to focus on the output and the boxes that they need to check rather than the individuals creating the output. The reality is we are a box-checking society. So how? How do we make people the priority? How do we help progress success, fulfillment, and the value of people at the same time? The key sits within the 3 C's: communication, connection, and how that links together to create confidence. And of course, I'm a teacher, so I'm going to give you an acronym. It's lean in. And I know if you lean in, you will find more success in every space. Let's start with communication. Communication is exactly where we need to start in creating connection with our people. Now, first tool in my lean in is L for legacy link. You're gonna be remembered. Good, bad, or ugly, it is what it is. The question is how. How do you wanna be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be? Living a life of legacy means that you've gotta be intentional. And being intentional is a mindset piece. So, quick story on mindset. It comes to you from the time that we all had the great opportunity to work remotely in 2020. During this time, I got really good at 2 things: Amazon Prime shopping and cleaning out spaces of my house. And there was a chair that I'd always planned on getting rid of. So I took that chair and I went to take it out, and then the doorbell rang. My packages. So I naturally had to unbox them, and I thought, well, I'll just put those boxes on that chair that I'm going to throw out later. But of course, Zoom, kids, life happened, and that obstacle blocking the walkway It just sat there. My lack of being intentional normalized something in my space that did not belong. And it makes me think, what else have I communicated with my own head and heart that doesn't belong, that is an obstacle, that could be holding me back from living out the legacy that I want to be remembered as? The E in lean stands for eye contact, the easiest nonverbal communication tool, and also the most powerful. I mean, think about when you have a good conversation, you want someone to look you in the eyes rather than, oh yeah, no, I'm listening. However, in the multitasking world that we live in today, this becomes a norm. This multitasking, lack of nonverbal communication, it hurts our relationships because eye contact builds trust, it generates engagement, and it tells the person in front of you, you are important to me, which links straight to the conversation piece, the A in lean, which is asking and answering questions. I have a friend. She's super sweet, she's fun, she's kind, she's bubbly, and everything's always just fine. And she's the last person I would share my struggles with. Because if you're not gonna be real with me, how can I be real with you? I don't wanna muddy your waters. Asking questions creates an engagement and an interest in others. Answering questions creates authenticity. And unless you want to get surface level, you have to give more than surface level. If you want time and honesty and authenticity, that's what you have to give when you ask and answer questions. In the end, it leads to a communication style that we can hold in our hands. It's notes and quotes. I learned the importance of it sitting in my grandmother's living room. She had given the girl down the street a wedding gift and did not get a thank you note. I'll never forget it. She's sitting in her recliner. She says, she'll be real surprised if she thinks she's getting a baby gift. But I learned the power of notes when I was teaching. I started giving notes to all of my students prior to competition. And then I started giving notes to remind them that I think they're incredible, to remind them that I'm here if you need me, to remind them that I believe in you. And you know what the difference is in a verbal reminder and a written down tangible reminder? It's that at 8 a.m. when I'm having a really bad day and you've told me, hey, let me know if you need help. By 4 p.m. when I've struggled all day long, I've forgotten what was said. But if you've handed me a note, it took intention. And I can hold it in my hand so that when by 4 p.m. I'm still struggling, I'm a lot more likely to come ask for help, to come share my struggle. That type of communication builds encouragement and positivity in every space. These communication tools, they're simple, they're easy to use, and they work in every space. But that's not all. After communication, you have to work on the connection, right? And the connection is an important piece because connection is what makes your kids want to talk to you. Connection is what makes people want to stay with you in your organization or company. Connection is what makes clients decide that they would like to continue working with you. And I want to show you the most powerful example of connection that showed me this lesson in influence, the I and lean in. You remember Zach? My boy who was funny and willing to try anything and an incredible leader. Well, in July of 2018, Zach had to start his life over because his world was turned upside down by a fire that spit him out with third-degree burns on almost 70% of his body and a traumatic brain injury. I'll never forget the call. One of the officers from my team the year he graduated called and she said, Schneers, they've identified the John Doe and it's Zach. And I got in my car and I drove straight to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, and I started pouring out my heart and my time and my resources to him and his family. I want to back up and share something that should have been on my job description as a teacher. I was known for my pep talks. They usually came at request right before a really hard round. Kids are at competition and they're like, Schneers, I need you to tell me why I'm gonna be okay. Because you worked really hard, because you're really talented, because you're ready for this, right? But in September of 2018, when Zach started coming out of a coma, I had to give a much more important pep talk. I walked into his room and I said, Zach, you look so good. And he said, Schneers, you and I both know that's crap. And then bandaged from head to toe, he looked at me and he said, I need you to tell me why I'm gonna be okay. And I said, because you are so strong, because you've come so far, because the world needs to see you. He is still influencing the world around him because he was absolutely all of those things. And that's not even the sweetest part of the story. The sweetest part of the story is when I learned that your circle really is a circle, and what you give, you're going to get back. And it was the year that I sat in front of him at his kitchen table and I told him what my plans were. Zach, I'm gonna leave the classroom and I'm gonna pursue speaking and consulting full time. I'm nervous because I really love teaching and I'm praying that I'm making the right choice. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, you need me to tell you why you're gonna be okay? Your circle of influence, they're taking notes. Be influential in your space. And of course, you can probably feel this coming. You can't just give some really good eye contact on Monday and hope your team's thriving by Friday, right? It takes nurturing, which is the last in lean in. You have to nurture. You can't go on a really great first date and then live happily ever after. That same concept applies to every relationship on the home front, in the classroom, in the company. Nurturing those relationships might take time. It might take energy, but that's where connections are built. And it's what makes people want to stay and be loyal to you and come back to you. And the reality is, if you're not willing to lean in, no one's going to lean on you. And the neat piece of these 3 C's is that communication and connection, you know what they create? They create confidence. Now, personally, confidence has been something I have struggled with the better part of my life. Blame it on the fact that I'm really tall and really bad at all things sports, or my crippling perfectionism, really, you can just pick. It wasn't until I learned to be confident because of the mirror that was being held up to me by someone who had invested in me that I realized my strengths. And sometimes it takes that person that had spent the time to lean in to show you that you've been a fish trying to climb a tree. And you should be functioning within your strengths. A place that we all would rather be. Because people who are confident are happier. They're more successful at their work. They're more successful at accomplishing their goals. You see, confidence, it isn't just a me problem. It isn't just a high school student problem. It isn't just a US problem. The UK House of Commons did a study in 2020 and learned that 53% of adults are less confident now than they were prior to the pandemic. So right now, more than ever, we have people everywhere struggling with confidence. And it is in confidence that we do our best work. I worked with a company who had some leadership changes, which are always a little difficult. And this one employee, he'd been thrown to a new boss, and she forgot to communicate or connect with him prior to just throwing projects at him that she thought he would be good at, that she thought he would excel at because they really were boxes that needed to be checked. Let me tell you what happened. He started to feel like that fish climbing up a tree. The projects he was getting did not help him excel. They did not make him feel valued, and they did not showcase his strengths, and he quit. This problem is not unique. We build confidence when we are seen for our strengths. So communicate, connect, and build confidence. And if you want people to be confident in you as a leader, you're going to have to build a bridge paved with that communication and connection. And let me tell you, Angela today, she found her voice, and she became an incredible leader in all kinds of high school organizations and all throughout college, and still today is someone that I would find a very influential, respected leader. John, the boy who was passionate about his poetry, he went on to be a state and national champion despite being homeless his senior year. And Zach? Well, Zach's a public speaker. And he speaks about fire safety, and he works to change laws in that realm, and he is impacting lives everywhere he goes. And I also want you to hear me say, you have an Angela, a John, a Zach in your circle of influence, in your organization right now. You have stories untold. You have pasts that are affecting your presence. You have vast, untapped potential, just waiting for someone to hold that mirror up and show them their strengths. Here's the reality. If we aren't willing to flip our focus and to make people first, you're never going to know what kind of strengths you are missing, and you're never going to find that untapped potential. So if you're the person in the corner saying, I don't think I have time for that, I need to focus on the bottom line. How can I afford to make this happen? I want you to hear me say, the amount of money, time, and energy that it takes to revamp your team, restructure your team, or rehire those who don't want to be in your space anymore are going to cost a lot more money than using the people priority and making your people feel important. So the real thought here is, you can't afford not to.